we are pleased to be joined by Austin FC midfielder, forward. What do you consider yourself, Ethan? It's Ethan Finlay.
Yeah, I'm a soccer player. How about that?
Yeah, it sounds good. I I was just watching. I was trying to I don't know find some nuggets of information about you, and I watched the Behind the Wheel series that you did with
Wow,
Hector,
you went
and
way back in the archive there.
it was just last year, right?
Well, kind of feels that way. I don't know.
And I I thought it was funny, that pairing of people, because I don't think you'll take offense to this, but I think you and Hector have big dad energy, and
We do have kids, so I don't know. I won't take any offense to it.
John does not have kids, but I would say he also has big dad energy. Do you think he's like an honorary dad, just as far as
Yeah, I would say so. I think he finds himself asking us questions about like what's going on. In fact, we were going through some of this off-season training, and we were exhausted after one day. And Hector said he was at soccer shots or something with his son, and I was at out at a park with my daughter like playing. He's like, "Fellas, I haven't even gotten off the couch all afternoon. I'm exhausted." So he he'll ask us about stuff, but he's a good guy. We keep him in our group, and he does have a little bit of dad energy, that's for sure.
so you've been in Austin just over 2 years now, I think, right? And
Yeah,
as you said, you have one kid or two kids now?
I have two. I have two.
Two.
We have
Yeah.
a daughter and a son.
Um, 2 years is enough time to kind of settle in a little bit. Do you guys have any like favorite things that you guys like to do around town, or that are Austin specific things?
Yeah, we really enjoyed our move. I think it takes a little bit of time, obviously, off the field to find friends, and I naturally have that with 20 plus guys in the locker room, and there's obviously the wives and girlfriends of other players, but there's a little bit of a cultural difference, and people are a little bit all over the place. You don't know obviously how long you're going to be here, so it's tough to get close sometimes with all those people. But we found a really nice group of people within our neighborhood that my wife has become quite close with. Our kids have become close with some of their kids, which is really nice. But we actually we enjoy the food scene here. We try to get downtown at least once a month, and get a babysitter and go try a new restaurant. We'll go try some of our favorites. We were just at ATX Cocina the other night. We're big Red Ash fans. Obviously, they'll be reopening hopefully sometime here in
All
the
the players
spring.
love Red Ash, huh?
Yeah, they do. It's a mix of Italian. They have a lot of meat options. It's yeah, the bone marrow. I mean, there's some unique stuff at that place, but it's great. We really enjoy it here, and we actually find ourselves going to some of the smaller towns. We spent a little bit of time in like downtown Georgetown, actually, in their little town square. Just kind of slow it down. I'm obviously from the Midwest, and so is my wife. It kind of reminds us of like small town Wisconsin and small town Minnesota vibes. And so and we've really tried to find like little pockets of areas that we like to try to go explore and spend time.
Going back to those beginnings, I guess you kind of came up through like the what is now becoming less and less common way of coming into MLS, which is going through kind of college, getting drafted, and coming through. That still happens, but it's less and less now. As you are coming into the league, like who are some of the mentors that kind of helped you along in those early days?
Mm. Yeah, so I got drafted to Columbus, and right away, they had a guy there who had, well, I think he was maybe only 26 or 27 at the time, but it was Eddie Gavin. I think he had maybe 10 years already in the league. So an experienced guy that was technically only like 6 years older than me, I think. And Eddie was a guy who I was able to learn from and ask questions, but he wasn't really going to necessarily guide me. He was naturally kind of a quiet guy himself, just kind of went about his business, but just was like a great soccer player. And I just kind of I'd find myself watching him a lot of the times, just like his movements, and he just kind of had a quiet confidence about himself. Didn't talk too much, didn't say too much. And for me, that was a little bit of kind of like humbling to just kind of like experience, playing a little bit behind him. I got some opportunities in those first two seasons to, start and pretty much just coming off the bench primarily. Um, the other guys that I would say that I hung out with or kind of brought me along as like fringe friends was like guys like Chad Marshall, who's obviously a legend, and Dave and Danny O'Rourke. Those two guys hung out all the time. They were kind of inseparable at the time, but they would invite some of the young guys out, or have us come over to their house and play Xbox and stuff like that. So we were just like thrilled to like that they'd hang out with us. And neither had kids at the time, so like we were kind of like the young people for them to like hang out with. But I'd say like those three in particular, the people that I kind of would always look to and see what those guys were doing, both on and off the field.
Is there a piece of advice that somebody gave you along the way that just like stuck with you and you still think about a lot?
Um, yeah, I mean, I got, I mean, there's a couple things. There was a quote. You guys have probably heard me say this about like the two things you can control, are your attitude and your work ethic, and like that came to me when I was like 15 years old. There was this like speaker in Madison, Wisconsin, when I was at like an ODP thing, and he just like said that, and it stuck with me. And my dad kind of like kept saying it to me, and like he liked the quote, and then he stopped saying it, and I just like I kind of adopted it as like my personal mantra of like, this is what I am, this is who I am. And I've kind of lived by that. I mean, I've always said like I don't think I've ever been the most talented player on any team that I've ever played on. Some people would say that that's not necessarily true, at least in the younger years. But like that's just how I felt. Like I just would just outwork you. I would tire you down a little bit. That was kind of my game. And over time, I think I've developed more technical ability and obviously experienced that at a higher level, and been able to do it at a pretty high level for quite a long time. But I don't know, that's like the one thing that I've really just lived my whole life by. And that goes like be whatever I'm going to do it 100%. And I'm going to like try to give it like my best effort. And like, I don't know, I personally think anytime you come into something with like a really positive mindset, or just like, it doesn't have to be overly positive, but even just like non-negative, like, oh, this isn't going to go well, I'm going to do it, but it's not going to go well. Like, it's just not a good place to start. And so for me, I've always been like, hey, new season, here we go, right? Who gives a crap like where we were last year? That was last year. I don't care. We could have all the same players on the team. All right, it's a totally new season, totally dry. Like, the game is so fine, the margins. And so things go a little bit the other way, you're going to be, up here in the table, for example. So, yeah.
So at some point so you're played for a while. You got exposed to or decided to get involved with the MLSPA. Like, was there a motivation or trigger where you decided to go from being like sort of just a player to like a player advocate?
Yeah, so I was really, first 2 years was just trying to, keep my foot in the league. Greg Berhalter comes in 14, and I'm like on the fringe in the preseason of like, man, I might get loaned out. What's going to happen here? I make the team. Some injuries happen. Take advantage of my opportunity. Get a starting role going into 15, and kind of my career starts to take off a little bit. At the same time, we lost some experienced players on our team. And Michael Parkhurst had just come back into the league, and we didn't really have like a leadership role in our PA as a player rep for Columbus. And I just kind of naturally, I just fell into it in a way. Danny O'Rourke had left in 14, and so there was a little bit of a vacancy. I just kind of stepped into it. I was fascinated, first and foremost, why my situation was what it was, right? Like, why was I on, a 1+1+1, like, and then like, what is per diem, and what are these like little like nuances that are within the CBA? So like, I just kind of found myself somewhat interested in it, and went to some of the meetings there in like 14 and 15, became the rep, held on to it, and had some older guys around me like Michael Parkhurst, Tyson Wall, who kind of like were secondary guys, but I technically had the voting role on our team for those couple of years that I was there.
Yeah, that's
Well, Landon's smiling because he's probably read the CBA more than any like normal human should. There's probably a whole show y'all could do off that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I just have actually, I'll reread like just portions of it. Like something will come up in the league, and I'll just like kind of deep dive into it a little bit. I mean, it's there's a lot of lawyer language, right? As you can attest to it. There's a lot of lawyer language, and you kind of have to find your way through it. Go through a couple tables, flip through some pages and whatnot. But I mean, it's interesting, right? It's the document that essentially controls this league and the day-to-day operations, right?
now I usually read it to try to understand roster rules, which they're explained there better than they are in the MLS website. But All that
It
said,
hasn't been updated yet, just so you guys know. I just checked the other day. They're still have the 2023, but neither here nor there. All right.
yeah, if you ever want to roll as as a CBA consultant for an Austin FC podcast, then we have a spot for you.
Yeah. So you've moved up, so now you're on the executive board of MLSPA. It's like what's the difference there, and like what extra responsibility, and then like what extra time commitment is that?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little idea of the framework. So our player reps would vote on our executive board. Unlike some other players associations, for example, the NBA PA, they have an actual president, a vice president, and those roles are kind of dictated differently. At the executive board level, we all have essentially an equal vote. So we currently have 9 members. We've expanded that. When I originally joined, we actually had 5, and then we quickly moved to 7. We just thought we needed more to have better representation of the size of our player pool, and it continued to grow. And so, if there's a vote, it could be 5-4. Even if, it's a 5-4, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pass. We try to use our best discretion on, okay, if this is something that we need to do. But I would say the executive board we manage the day-to-day or help manage the day-to-day operations. We have the responsibility of, taking a look at the staff at the end of the year, doing quarterly, financials, making sure that our PA is in a good financial situation. Anything that had to be voted on from a CBA standpoint, that is a separate thing. We create a bargaining committee, which would have a player rep from each team. The executive board can't necessarily pass a CBA, for example, without the player pool being involved, right? And those reps really have the control. And the reps are representing, the 28 plus players on each team. It's a little bit, obviously, of a little bit more that we're being asked as on the executive board. But it's not. It's for me. I've always encouraged players to do it because it's not too much. We have a privilege of being able to play soccer and do what we do, and we have a lot of flexibility in our hours. And the hardest part is you get guys on the West Coast and the East Coast, and okay, 5 p.m. or is that East Coast West Coast time, because that might it's afternoon or it's evening for guys. And so that's probably the toughest part about it, is making sure we can all get on the same page. But we do the same thing. We record our Zoom meetings, and so if you miss one, you can jump on it, and then we'll follow up via email and whatnot on what we're going to be doing.
How much is the average player like informed or engaged with what the MLSPA is doing?
We just had our annual meeting. We do one every year, where we invite usually 2 or 3 players, usually the reps within each team, and then a couple other players maybe that we're hoping to bring onto the PA, maybe guys that the PA would be interested in getting involved maybe post-career. So we're always trying to look to have more players involved whatsoever. We had about 60 guys this year, so a decent representation. The hardest part is it's off season, and you get guys who travel back to their countries, or they're getting married in the off season. So we do find it quite challenging. But I would say that when it comes to CBA time, at least our last CBA, we had probably the most informed group that I've ever been a part of in my 8 years now. Being involved with the Players Association, in some capacity. So I think communication with things like Zoom, with some of the translation tools that we've been able to use have been extremely helpful. We've been able to hire 2 or 3 full-time Spanish speaking director of player operations, like the mentors essentially, within our organization. We're continuing to try to evolve and have French speaking. We think that's extremely important because it makes a big difference when the PA shows up and they're speaking the same language as half the team. I think the stat is something about 30-40%, something like that, are Spanish speaking in our league, primarily. So we need to have representation at the PA level. My hope is that we continue to have guys get involved from outside the country. Guys like Diego Valeri historically were involved, Diego Chara. It's important when those voices step up and say something in English or in Spanish, it can move the player pool in one direction. And so we need more of that. We had a lot of that, I think, in 2020 and 2021 during the renegotiation. But we have to continue to evolve our leaders within our locker rooms.
So let's shift a little bit to your role on the field here. Oh, sorry, Jeremiah, I cut you off. You had a question here.
Oh, it's fine. No. I'm looking at the same list you are. Like I was just gonna say, let's go to on the field. like what you talked about your sort of like enthusiasm. Like what gets you going? Like what do you love to do on the field of play?
I love to compete, man. I mean, at the end of the day, like that's all. Like you can ask these guys. It could be a board game, a card game. I could be playing with my family, my kids. Like I love to compete, and I love going out there competing with my teammates, competing against them. During training, and then getting on the field. It's tough business because we're all dictated on wins and losses. But for some reason, for whatever reason, I get real enjoyment out of it. There's nothing like winning the game, and it's that feeling that you get. It becomes a little bit of a high, and you crave it, and you want the next one. And it's for me, it's a driving force. And so team success. I've had some individual success in my career, but I don't know. I still feel like there's a longing that I want to win something. I want to be part of a winning culture. I just think that that's such a unique thing when you can get a group of people together, all going in the right direction to do something special throughout a season, throughout a tournament, whatever it might look like. I think that's unique, and I want to be a part of that.
So talking about on the field stuff, if you remove like scoring a goal or getting an assist or winning a game, like what is a thing that like brings you joy to do on the soccer field? Like an example would be like for me when I'm playing in my 6th division co-ed rec league,
Yeah.
if I on the receiving end of a 1-2 and I can play like a really nicely weighted pass around a defender into the path of a player, like that's one of the most satisfying things that I ever do. And I do it like once a year and it feels great. What is like a moment like that for you on the field?
To me, I think it's like it's you're not going to probably believe this, but it's kind of more on the defensive side. I love the idea of like working with like my right back and like shutting down like an opposing side, right? Like I kind of take that as a real challenge. Like when you're like forced back as like a winger, and I think our wingers primarily, like we defend more than a lot of other wingers, I think, in the league. And we're kind of forced to do so. But like it's a challenge, and I really enjoy that like competitiveness where like you might find yourself maybe attached almost in the back line, and you're trying to prevent a cross. That like little moment, and you see it a lot like in Europe where like a guy like puts in like a slide tackle, or he tracks back and makes a play on a ball. Like that's like a big moment, and I think it's a moment that fans around our league should probably appreciate like a little bit more, because those are just like those are such small moments, I think, that could always become the moment where like a guy like he makes that cross and they score on it. But like no, this winger, like he tracked back, he got down, he tracked his man 40 yards as there was an overlapping run, and he made a slide tackle, and maybe it goes out for a throw in. But like those kind of plays like that jacks me up. That's something that like I'll think back about later. I'll like watch back on clips and be like, I can hold my head held high, and I like those plays.
There's some attacking players you can tell don't care that much about defending, but
Yeah.
I really enjoy watching. I mean, you and Jossie are guys who play in the attacking half, but watching you like in the press, I can tell both of you, and it's not just you two, but you two are good examples of guys who like you can tell are studying the defensive side of the game as well, like checking cover shadows in the press and things like that. And like not every player does that kind of stuff. So I think it's cool and like a good example for other players to see attacking players care about the defending part of the game.
Yeah. I think you have to at this level. I just think you can't, you can't have any passengers. That was an old saying that Adrian Heath used to have. You just can't have any passengers. And like, I like it. It's true. Like if we're all going to be going in the right direction, like we got to have everybody on board, everybody doing their job. So yeah, I don't know. I like the defensive side of the ball, and that's maybe strange coming out of an attacking guy's mouth, but 1-0. I know Josh won't like me saying that, but 1-0. I can do that all day long. All right.
You just said Adrian Heath's name, and now I want to ask you a bunch of questions about Adrian. I'm not going to. Let's talk more about your role in the field. How has your role as a winger evolved in your time at Austin FC?
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's evolved a little bit on the offensive side. We obviously cross the ball, quite a bit. I think I played a little bit more inside before, and had a little bit more of an overlapping, outside back. I think that was something that somewhat changed for Austin from 21 to 22, where the fullback wasn't quite as overlapping, where the width was coming a little bit more from the wingers. And, I've played with a couple different tens over there, right? I played with Alex a little bit at the start, Owen a little bit. Seba usually primarily kind of will adjust to the other side when we play with two tens. So, you know, I don't know how much it's actually like really evolved. I do think that we got a little bit stagnant in the attack last year. We lacked a little bit of creativity, and for me individually, I would say like being a little bit more aggressive in certain moments, not being afraid to get dispossessed and lose the ball, because you do it 3 times, 4 times, and it works out one time, it can result in a goal. And I think maybe that mentality, having a little bit more in certain areas when we get the ball, instead of saying, we're going to cross this ball, really putting teams on their heels. I think that's something that I realized that teams did to us, and it wears you down, right? You get in the box, you have to defend totally differently. To me, this is something that we have to be thinking a little bit more of, going forward. And we'll see. I think obviously, a guy like Nick Lima, I played quite a bit with as right back. Obviously, he's not here anymore, so we'll see how that the relationships on the right hand side evolve. We'll see who's playing there, obviously. So I'm excited about it. I think there's a lot of different possibilities, and we have a lot of versatility on this team. I think you'll probably hear that all preseason. Like, there's a lot of versatility with several players, and so I'm excited. I think guys can be plugged in different spots, and I don't think too much of it as like, hey, this guy has to play this spot. I think that we have the ability to be able to move around and change things up, and have a little bit of variation.
The MLS season is very long, and going out of a long season, a difficult one or a fun one, I know there's probably a need for players to kind of disconnect and get away from it a little bit. How do you balance the mentality of disconnecting and getting away, but also keeping yourself, like maintaining yourself physically and then getting mentally prepared to go into another long season?
Well, you find a great support system, and I got a great family. My wife is just like rock solid, the best sounding board that I could ask for. And for me, that's like the starting point, because I know that there's going to be ups and downs, just like you said. It's going to be a long season, and having something away from the facility that you can just rely on, to me, is extremely important. I think then within the facility, I think understanding that we're all pulling in the right direction, and communicating if things aren't going well or guys are frustrated, nip it in the butt, talk it out, get it figured out as quickly as possible. I think letting things fester or really not addressing it's not a way. It's not going to be a way to have long-term success. And a lot of times that's going to determine what your season ends up looking like. So for me, we have a lot of experience. We have a lot of leaders on this team. Yeah, there's different languages that guys speak, but everybody understands soccer, right? And guys know when things are working. Things know when things aren't working. And I think we have to be better at identifying if certain players are frustrated, or if this guy needs to get a goal, or what I mean. And like, just like as players, and I'm not even taking coaches, I'm saying like players looking out for players and saying, hey, this guy might be going through something, and like, maybe we give him a break. Maybe we give him a break a little bit and say, hey, like, what, this guy's going through a little bit of a tough time. Like, let's continue to encourage him, right? Instead of maybe jumping on a guy right away. I mean, these are just like the little moments that I think that I've identified. And honestly, I'm not saying that we have this issue necessarily, but I do think that it's something that we can get better at. And we have too much experience, too much leadership in this building, for us to be our worst enemy, and I think that can happen at times. So, I'm excited. I think it's gonna be a great challenge for us this season.
Well, let's maybe just go in the week to week, sort of game week prep. Like, one, generally, like, how often do you know in advance if you're going to be in the lineup or not? And then does that change sort of your approach?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think as the week goes on, you might get a feeling like, hey, I'm out or I'm in. I would say every week there's a handful of spots that you can just identify right off the bat. You guys could probably see it yourselves, like, hey, then maybe there's gonna be a switch here, maybe there's not. I would say that every week, 11s get adjusted. Players are put in different spots during set pieces during the week. I don't think that that's because they want to confuse us by any means. To me, I think it's like there needs to be honest, genuine competition right up to it. I'm totally comfortable with, and maybe not every player is, with knowing the day of. And usually in our pregame meeting, sometimes on the road that would happen the night before, but it's usually in a pregame meeting. You'll get the set lineup. I do know usually, Josh will have those conversations individually with a guy who maybe is getting pulled, for example. So he's not going to go into that meeting blindsided by any means, where he's like, "Oh man, my name's not up there." That's it's happened to me before. I know it's happened to other guys where, like, he has a conversation sometime during that day or the night before and says, you're out of the lineup tomorrow, and this is what I'm seeing. Be ready. You could be put in 45 minutes in. You could be, you're going to come in. That kind of conversations, is definitely happening. As we lead into the game. So, but usually, yeah, you find out, the day of in our pregame meetings, or the day before. Just kind of depend on when that meeting happens.
One thing you've touched on this a couple times, like soccer being a multilingual sport. Are there any particular keys that you have for effective communication sort of on the field when you've got guys sort of in the moment that maybe speak 3 or 4 different languages?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried. I should do better at it, but I've tried to learn like a little bit of Spanish. Just things like right and left, press, solo. Like these are just a couple of things where I can communicate with them. I just think like it's just super. It's natural that if I say something in one of these guys, native tongue, they're gonna be able to process that information quicker than me saying right and left in English, right? I mean, they understand it. Don't get me wrong, but if I can help them in any which way, you're going to try to do so. So, I think most of our guys, even if they don't say it to you guys, they speak pretty good English. They definitely understand it. I'll tell you that. They definitely understand it. You can't get anything by them. But it's good. I think our club does a good job at, encouraging guys. We hire a lot of bilingual staff, which I think it makes guys feel really, really comfortable as well. So, I think I've been at 3 different clubs. This club's by far at the forefront with that.
So Ethan, I think you're in your early 30s, we'll say now.
Yeah.
Still hopefully several years of soccer to go, but
Yeah.
you're getting at the age where you're probably starting to think about what happens after. Do you know what that answer is yet?
Yeah, I don't know what that answer is. I've always approached every season, and I'll continue to do so. And I'm never going to go into a season and say it's my last season. And I just don't think that's any way to play sport in general. I think you might find out sometime during the year, that hey, like this is probably it. But I feel extremely healthy, and I think when I had my ACL in 2018, I had a lot of doubts. I was like, man, like, that sets a lot of guys back. But the way I've been able to recover and come back and physically take care of my body, one of the reasons I came here was because of the medical staff here. I mean, without a doubt, starting with Dave Tenney, going down to guys like Tosh, like we have an incredible medical team. And for a player who's gone through, some injuries, I thought that was extremely important, to have a, people around, great resources that are going to take care of me. And obviously the resources that we have in this building are second to none. So, I'm going to play as long as I can. So, they're going to have to probably drag me out of the building or change my card. But I'm going to play as long as I can. I think obviously I have 13 years of experience in football, and I think it makes sense to probably continue to pursue that in some capacity. Whether that be front office, whether that be coaching, we'll see. And that being said, I'm very open to doing something outside of that. I've thrown around getting my MBA in the last few years. And so, like, I'm very open to whatever comes. But right now I'm 100% in, and I plan on playing at least 2 or 3 more years for sure.
So we're done with all of our serious questions. I think Jeremiah has a few silly questions for you.
Yeah, I'll be really quick because I see the running meteor time on the Zoom.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah. So we have a group of friends of ours that we call Handsome Boys Modeling Football Club, which mostly involves people who talk about the boys. So we've got a couple quick questions from this group for you. One is, do the dads on the team do group play dates during the season? Like, can we find y'all in a park together?
Not necessarily group play dates, but I would say that the guys who have kids are all invited to the kids' birthday party. So like you could have a 6-year-old and you're getting invited. You got a kid, you're getting invited to that birthday party. So a lot of the birthday parties, we all get all the kids together.
Cool. How about pregame locker room music? Who's in charge? And if it isn't you, what's your favorite type of music and what would you play?
It's definitely not me. I'm not your music guy by any means. It's probably Pepe. Hector Jimenez will get in there every once in a while, but probably those two. My music, I don't know. My wife has got Taylor Swift going on all the time at the house. I'm a big like Mumford and Sons kind of Lumineers. That's my vibe.
So we've got a partner show called Swoon Tower Soccer, and Steph Cognola is one of the hosts of that, and y'all share a birthday. And I believe I think Steph's husband tweeted at y'all last year. So do you have any like birthday twin advice that we could pass along to Steph?
Well, you're a Leo, and so I think Leos are quite special, which I think all Leos think that they are. So
I am too. Absolutely. Yeah, cool. So I like where this is going, Ethan.
There you go. Right. So, I mean, just embrace it. You're a natural leader, even if someone tries to get in your way. Just keep pushing through.
All right. And then the last one I have is, have you had any like interesting or funny fan interactions like since you've been here in Austin?
Well, I had God, I don't know the guy's name necessarily, but he brought like a poster to like a signing and said he was wrong about Ethan Finlay or something.
Oh yeah, I remember that guy.
I'm not actually sure what he said. I think maybe he just doubted me in some capacity, which is fine. That's a long line, those doubters. I encourage them. I need them, honestly, more than the people that believe in me. So it's I thought that was funny. Funny for him to kind of come full circle on that. So I always enjoy that. We got great passionate fans here. That's the one thing I'll say. I've talked about when you guys were first jumping on here. Like it's cool that you guys are doing this, right? Like not every club has that kind of a culture. We need more of it. It's good for our sport. It's good for our club and our community.
All right. Well, Ethan, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. I know you'll have a lot going on now in preseason, getting ready to leave town as well. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this.
Yeah. Thanks, Landon. Thanks, Jeremiah. All right.
All right. Have a good one.
Thanks, man.